Once upon a time, a hungry fox was walking through the forest. She had been walking for a long time, and she was very hungry. As she walked along the forest path, she looked around for something to eat. Then, suddenly, she noticed something beautiful above her. There was a bunch of lovely grapes hanging from a vine on a tree. The grapes looked fresh, sweet, and delicious. The hungry fox stopped and looked at them carefully. She thought to herself that these grapes would make a wonderful meal. She moved closer to the tree and looked up. The grapes were hanging high above her head, but they seemed close enough to reach. The fox became excited and decided to try. She jumped up toward the grapes, but her first jump was not high enough. She landed on the ground and looked up again. The grapes were still hanging there, just out of reach. The fox did not give up. She took a few steps back, gathered her strength, and jumped again. She stretched her paws as far as she could. She tried very hard, but once again she could not reach the grapes. She looked at the grapes and decided to try one more time. With all her strength, she jumped high into the air. For a moment, she thought she might finally reach them. But the grapes were still too high. She came down and stood beneath the vine. The fox was determined. She walked around and looked for another way to reach the grapes. She tried jumping from a different place. She moved closer to the tree. She stretched her body and reached her paws toward the fruit. But every attempt failed. The grapes remained high above her. The fox became tired, but she continued trying. She jumped again and again. Each time, she hoped that her paws would touch the grapes. Each time, she came back down without them. Finally, she realized that she could not reach the fruit. She stood quietly for a moment and looked at the grapes. The fox was disappointed. She had wanted those grapes very badly. She had imagined how sweet they would taste. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not get them. She made one final attempt. She jumped as high as she could, stretched her paws, and tried to catch the grapes. Again, she failed. The fox landed on the ground and looked tired. She knew that she had done everything she could. There was no way for her to reach the grapes from where she stood. She took a deep breath and looked at them one last time. At last, the fox stopped trying. She turned away from the tree and began to walk along the forest path. As she walked, she tried to make herself feel better. She told herself that perhaps the grapes were not worth eating after all. Maybe, she thought, the grapes were not ripe. Maybe they were bitter and sour. She said that she did not really want them. But deep inside, she knew that she had wanted them very much. She had simply been unable to reach them. Still, she continued walking and left the grapes behind. The fox walked farther and farther away from the tree. She did not turn back. She continued along the path through the quiet forest. The grapes remained hanging high on the vine, exactly where they had been. The fox finally accepted that she could have them. She kept walking, leaving the grapes behind her. And then the fox said to herself, after all, those grapes were probably not ripe. They were probably bitter and sour. Why should I want them? With those words, she continued on her way. But the truth was simple. She had wanted the grapes, but she could not reach them. Instead of admitting that she had failed, she convinced herself that the grapes were not good. This is the lesson of the story. Sometimes we want something very much, but we cannot get it. When that happens, we should not pretend that the thing was worthless just because we could have it. It is better to be honest with ourselves. We can admit that we wanted something and that we were not able to reach it. Then we can learn from the experience and continue forward. The story of the fox and the grapes reminds us to accept reality with honesty. If something is beyond our reach, we can try our best, learn from what happened, and move on without making excuses. We should not say that something is bad simply because we could not get it. Instead, we should be patient, humble, and truthful with ourselves. And so, the hungry fox continued walking through the forest. The grapes were left behind, hanging quietly on the vine. The fox walked on, carrying the lesson with her. Sometimes the things we cannot have may seem less valuable only because they are out of our reach. But honesty helps us understand what really happened. And that is the lesson of the fox and the grapes.